God of the universe, maker of the stars, who am I that you would know my name?
Welcome to yet another. Excuse me, that's not a good way to start. Got something in my throat right there. Welcome to another.
Do you want me?
Life on
I'll
Purpose.
edit that out. Okay.
It does. You know what? People need to know that we're just four actual real people that get food stuck in their throat sometimes when they're trying to say something. So now you know we're all human. All four of us. We're literally actual people.
Wow.
So anyway, welcome back. We're glad to have you all in the middle of this festival season that we have now started. You're here with me, myself, and I, Daniel Clayton. You're here with Top Dog / Dad / kind of whatever, whatever you want to call him, Mike Clayton. And then the endless Dave Covert, and Ryan Cribbs is also back with us after being out sick last week. We're glad to have him back.
Yes.
So yeah, I last week was this last weekend was here with a bunch of sick kiddos and stuff. But you guys weren't. You guys were doing something. And so how did that something go?
Well, David, Ryan, what did you guys do?
I was about to say it was definitely a great time. We were very happy to be able to be in Rossville, Georgia, with a bunch of you guys, and hopefully you guys are listening that we're there. And it was definitely a wonderful time. We had Mike laying down some heat, Rico also bringing some understanding with also some heated words, because we've got there's definitely some things going wrong that need to be fixed. And this festive season of the fall feast is definitely a good reminder that, as much as it's great, we're doing as best as we can, man, we got some things to work on. And I was like, wow, I was taking my mental notes going, whoa, I need to fix that. I need to go into this next week changing some things. So that was something I took away from that. And of course, as with any Yom Teruah service, there was plenty of shofar blowing. There was plenty of them, plenty. You guys brought the shofars very, very loud and clear. So again, it was wonderful to have the shofars blasting as much as they were, and just having a wonderful time of crowning him king. It really was just a truly awesome time.
Yeah, it was. It sure was. Ryan?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting time. I think there was sort of the, it was a Shabbat, and it's Yom Teruah, so like a double deep Shabbat, if you will. and in that sort of, the crowning of him king, I think maybe it was easy to forget why we were there to crown him king. I don't know. I don't want to sound too harsh, I guess, but there was a lot of, I think, seemingly disconnected individuals throughout the entire event, whether it was disconnected to the speaker or disconnected during the worship. And I fear that we might have come to a place where conferences or whatever that we would like to call them have become a form of distraction and entertainment seeking versus what they were meant for, which is the edification of the body. And fellowship as well. But am I making sense, or am I?
You're making way too much sense, and that will conclude the program tonight.
Okay,
yes,
that's all I had to say. Ryan. That's all I came for.
Yeah, that's fine. You went ahead and just ran right into it here. That I've seen this for quite some time, and that's why I do. Well, the other reason I'm not invited to a lot of big conferences, but I don't go to many big conferences because I don't like the, as you said, what a lot of it's turned into. The people that are there for fellowship. Okay, fellowship's good. It's wonderful. We need it. We need to be encouraging one another and all of those things. But then there comes a time that we need to turn that focus, and we need to focus on him and the reason that we're there. And it's sad. You guys know, I mean, to give you an idea, Daniel, we haven't even talked about this. but I sent a picture on to the guys at Life Assembly. Happened again. Happened again. We this kind of been like the thing is I spoke Friday night and turned it over to Ryan, to the Exodus Road Band, and Ryan, kudos to you. And I know you can kind of plug your ears at this moment, but I have seen a lot. I've seen a lot of people through the years that literally just heard what the direction needed to go, and to watch Ryan respond to that voice as he got up there behind that keyboard. And I think I remember you saying something like, "Now what am I going to do?"
Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And there was this heaviness, the kavod, the weight of his glory was in the room. And you turned it over to Bethany, who is the youngest of the boyettes, has not been center stage with the band, and she began. I think it was a cappella at first. "Oh Lord, you're beautiful."
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, when she did that, from the moment that I looked at her later, I said, "That's the prettiest I've ever heard that song sang."
Mm-hmm.
But she went in that second verse of, "Please light the fire that burns so bright and clear."
Mm-hmm.
And when she did, I just grabbed a microphone, came back up, and gave an altar call. And there were people. I mean, we're talking about Yom Kippur, okay? And at Yom Kippur, it's the verse is, "And you shall deny yourself or humble yourself." We're going to talk about that hopefully here in a moment.
Mm.
But and you said something about crowning him king. Let me tell you, there was some people doing some crowning there, and they were on their face, and they're laying on their face, weeping. People are trying to go. They're going to the bathroom, finding Kleenex, and it's just amazing. And then to look out and to see people that are just sitting, looking like they're bored stiff. I know what you're talking about, Ryan.
Yep.
I think something that we've talked about in the episode before, because I got to kind of be in Mike's position there for a little bit because we were having some sound difficulties. So sometimes I will wear multiple hats and be in the back of the room while trying to support the band with bass. I got to sit back and watch, and it was no one else understands that point, being on stage, being off stage, that there's a whole different dynamic a lot of times. You think you know what it is. If you've never done it, you really don't understand. You don't know. I would hope that you, if you're listening, if you ever have the opportunity to, it will give you a perspective, maybe even a much needed perspective, because a lot of times some of these bands will get up there and they will make the decision as they're walking on to stage that, well, that went the entire set list, what we prepared for, what we thought we were going to play, that's gone. What do we do now?
Yeah.
And that's a tremendous amount of faith to go, okay, because I'm privy to this story, but from behind the scenes, she was literally working on this song that week. That was it. And of course, God has that mysterious way that he'll move. And he'll just, I know Daniel's done that before too, where he'll work on a song and be like, "Oh man, that could be a lot of fun in a few weeks," and then be playing Shabbat going, "We're playing that one." And you just know that it just shifts and moves into that.
Yeah.
Again, music is emotion. And if you don't understand that there's whatever the music is, whether it was written by this person or that person, there's something that's being conveyed through the frequency of that song. And a lot of times people get so hung up on where it came from, what it did, and all this other stuff when they don't realize what's the impact it's doing right now. What is it doing right now?
Yeah.
And where you can test, where you can feel, and doing this is, for however long we've been doing this, you realize that there's moments where you throw everything out and you go, "Sir, what would you like me to play?" Yeah. And that's literally what happened that night. It went totally off the beaten path, but like we've said many times, all it takes is one.
Mm-hmm.
It takes one to step up. It takes one to start something, and then it just goes everywhere. And it was just, it's amazing to see it, and it's amazing to see still, unfortunately, a resistance to it. Yeah, the response,
or lack of response. Yeah,
or lack of response, but a resistance to it.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's with preconceived notions.
Yeah.
And I hope that we continue to preach this, that put your preconceived notions at the door, leave them there, just walk in.
Yeah.
So go for Mike.
Daniel, you weren't there, but with what we've said, give us your perspective.
I think that one of my favorite statements in the whole world came courtesy of Dad. And it was when excuse me, I think the first time that I heard it was when we started Life Assembly. And what you said was kind of hearkening back to your Shady Seas days, that you wanted the same thing for Life Assembly that you did for your church back then.
Yeah.
And that was to create an atmosphere that was so holy, or I say create an atmosphere. And I guess that's what I mean.
Yeah.
By living in such a way that creates an atmosphere that God smiles upon entering into it in such a powerful way that people either have to run to the altar or run out. Like, it's not even a choice. Like, those are the only two choices. There is no neutral. And I think that our culture is suffering a sickness of neutrality. Because we've talked about that on the show. You just can't be neutral in things. You have to take a stand. You have to make your choice on which side you're going to be on the fence. And that's in every single day. You have to choose where you're going to be. And I'm thinking about Yom Kippur and all this, and how I think we're going to get to this in a minute, but it says to afflict yourself. It says to deny yourself, whatever that word ends up being. But the majority of people will focus on that verse in response to Yom Kippur and almost forget entirely that that's the day that the high priest went into the especially holy place.
Yeah.
And that means something very significant for us who follow Yeshua, who tore the veil. Because it says in 1 Peter, I believe it is, that he has made us a kingdom of priests. And one of the things Rico is most known for is talking about the protocols and how to respectfully and correctly approach the King of Kings. I'm not saying by any means to do that flippantly, but as a follower of Yeshua, this whole thing should mean something totally different to us than those who do not have Yeshua, because we know that he tore that veil. We know that the presence of God has been made accessible. And so the reason I'm thinking about that in relation to all this is because I really hope that all of us start to really understand his glory and his weight and the manifest presence of God, because it should be something that we have to make a choice upon. We should have to choose either to run up and be a part of it and to engage with it, to pray for those who are experiencing it, or remove your presence from tainting the atmosphere.
Ryan, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Remove your presence from tainting the atmosphere. That's a line.
That was rough, wasn't it?
It's almost Shakespearean.
I'm writing.
Yeah. No, I got you. I'm sitting on that one for just a moment. I'm deciding on a couple directions to go here, so y'all forgive me for taking a pause.
That's okay.
Take it.
There's while Ryan's collecting, I think that I just wanted to just say that that was That's great, because I think a lot of times I've said that so many times, and like I've already said this from last week, that very big proponent I really do enjoy a traditional Yom Kippur service. I really do. And I've adopted over the years because I saw what you said the same thing last time. If the focus is about fasting, you're doing it wrong. That's not the purpose. You're hungry, munch on a cracker. I don't care. Like, if that's the only thing you can think about is how hungry you are, that's not the point. You are not entering into Yom Kippur if that's the thing you're focusing on. That's totally agree with you there.
Right.
It's interesting. I want to break down the phrase, actually. It kind of kept ringing in my ear. Afflict yourself. Afflict yourself. The act of the desires of your self being, whatever it is, to put that, basically submit that before the Father, which that also means that I want to go back to that creating a holy atmosphere for a moment as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy for us to sit there and listen to ourselves when something is going on. Maybe there's a song playing or a worship group that's playing or a speaker that's speaking, and maybe you don't like that particular person, or you don't agree with that band, or you don't really like their music. And so you allow your own self to stand in front of the way of the anointing that would be coming into that place, or that might be changed. For instance, I've been guilty of this. I'll stand there might be a band playing, and somebody will just hit their face, and I'll think, really, to this song? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's my and again, it's like when that comes, it's like, yes, basically excuse yourself from the room or change your perception and submit your thoughts before the Father. Is that correct? Is that what I should be doing? Is that glorifying the Father? Is that bringing any edification to the body at all? Is that acting in love? Sort of working up those levels, if you will. You mentioned the temple, like when the veil was torn. I look at the temple and I see all the different courts and so forth in it, and the different requirements for each area, which meant that, if you're a priest, you can go in as far as you want, or you can stop at any stage, in a sense, right? So you can go, I want to go out here, but I don't want to do the requirements to go into here, right? I can go to this court, but I don't want to change into the clothes that are required to go there, right? There's all these sort of things. I feel like it's the same with worship or at a conference or whatever, where we're coming before the Father. You can enter in as far as you want to, but it's up to you as to whether or not you actually want to hit that deep level, because the curtain, the veil's been torn. You can go in, but are you actually cleaning yourself up to enter in? Are you doing the appropriate things? Or are you going to come in there and be the trespass that causes the disruption?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And I think
I hope I'm not rambling, but
no, to back up your point, in a very simple way, it doesn't matter who on earth is on stage. Who like, it does not matter, because God can move through whoever he wants to. Yeah. And so when we place our opinion upon whoever is on stage, whether it's speaking or playing music or whatever, or praying or anything, and criticizing how they pray even,
right,
God can move through in any way, shape, or form he wants to, whoever he wants to. And so by us placing our opinion on who is up there, it's doing exactly what you're saying.
Yes.
There was some things that happened this weekend I can't go into the details on, but Ryan, you are well aware of there were some things that happened with me personally Friday night. And I woke up Friday morning having to hit the road and get over to Georgia and everything, and I woke up to no water in the house at all. I went down and we've got a well, tapped on the little pressure valve, which always comes on, and it didn't. Ended up meeting Daniel and Chris Sharp at Lowe's that morning to buy a new one. Come home, check, and I'm like, wait a minute, I got power on both sides. Oh boy, that means it's the well pump. End up calling the well company, and the guy answers the phone. He says, okay, let me take you through this. Reset the switches. It came on, hasn't been a problem since. And then got there, and there was some things that were just some turmoil that was going on. And I finally looked at Ryan and I said, hey, follow me. And we walked into a room and I said, Ryan, I got to get up there and speak in a moment. I need you to pray over me. And I don't know that I would have been able to do what I did Sunday night if it hadn't been for that moment in time. It just, something changed in me. And, because I was becoming the person whose presence was going to taint the room.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I mean, I've got to think about that one, Daniel, for a long time. That when I see someone, as I have in 30 years of full-time ministry as of next month, I've seen a lot of people get up and walk out of a room. And many times I realized they needed to get up and walk out. Mm-hmm. Because what was going to happen, it wasn't for them. And maybe later on it was. Maybe later on it was like, okay, but that time right then, there where they were at right then, it would have been like Ananias and Sapphira. You don't need to be in the room right now. And there's times that we just need to, for me, there's times I need to walk out of the room and say, am I going to taint the room by my presence? Mm-hmm. And then come back in with a renewed emphasis, and knowing, as you just said, that everything that is happening, the Father can control this. He can work through it. He can show people dichotomies of things. There's so much that he can show that I don't know what's going on in that.
Right. I do want to add something to kind of pick on something, though, speaking of leaving the room as well. And this comes to more leadership. Sort of one of my early mentors, if you will, and we mentioned, I think, like our last couple of weeks, we recently had a class with this gentleman, Bob Dredger. He told me one time a phrase that was lead from the front.
Yeah.
And he was admonishing me on something, but he was like, you've got to lead from the front. Yeah. And that also means that you can't ask somebody to do something that you're not willing to yourself take care of. Be willing to be, if you're going to ask somebody to mop the floors, don't ask them, just start mopping the floors. And eventually they're going to see you mopping the floors enough, they'll go, hey, let me take that this time. Yeah. You be the first one in the mud. I think part of some of the fault we have with a lot of people, leaving the room, going and chatting, creating disruption or whatever, is because sometimes the leadership, even though we've maybe heard the message 1,000 times or heard the songs, 500 times, and I've been guilty of this. I'm pointing one finger and I've got how many pointed back at me. But when the audience, when the attendees see the leaders walking out of the room and going and not actually giving reverence or giving attention to what is happening during the event, I think that's a mistake, and it's maybe a step in the wrong direction that starts the flow.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if anybody should be leaving the room, it should be you and Dave, because you've heard my shofar message. Well, Tony said 57 times, but yet you're there supporting, and you're there, cheering it on and praying and whatever is being done. Mm-hmm. Daniel, David, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, there were some things that, man, you guys will bring up some points that are just like, oh, I like that one. Oh, I want to talk about that one. Oh, but I think I just want to, again, I think what I hope for those who are listening, I think that where we're coming from is a point of this time and season, right? Where we've gone from the month of Elul now into the fall feast. This whole previous month has been in preparation for right now, and now we're in the 10 days of awe. And when you listen to this, you will be very well into the 10 days of awe, and maybe even right before Yom Kippur, which will be think that for most calendars, it's Monday. I know there's other ones that are different. Doesn't matter. You do you. I do not care at all. Just, he says to remember the feast. Remember the feast. That's all I care about. But we're right now in an intense time. And I think this is why this podcast has kind of turned into this almost extreme self-introspection, just realizing what we've seen while on the road, what we've seen as we've traveled around, what we've seen from individuals. We've seen this stuff, and it's just we're looking back, like just what everyone has just said. We're looking back on ourselves going, oh wow, I've seen a pitfall. Oh, wow, I've seen something where I thought I was making a step forward, I was actually taking steps back, or realizing I might have actually been the problem in a situation. I think that something came up recently, and I really want to bring this up because we've been talking a lot about just events as we get together. And something was, I cannot remember the conversation, but the conversation came up about concerts, secular concerts. I'm a human being. I enjoy secular music. So I also enjoy that kind of music. I don't stone me, but I can enjoy some of those music sometimes. But I've gone to concerts. Dave? I know. I've gone to these concerts. And you know what blows my mind is that every single one of those people paid to get there. And there's far more unity in a secular concert than when we say, hey, we're going to do this for God and it's absolutely free. We want you to come in and we want you to bring your heart and we want you to just come and just be a part of this. Instead, it's full of, oh man, instead it comes full of, it's like when we say something is free, it's a green light to everyone bringing in all their stuff to try to throw on everybody else. And it's like, what is this? And if you've never gone to one, I want to challenge you. Go to a secular concert. Just go enjoy music. Tell me how. Email us then. Let us know what you saw versus what you've seen in some of these faith-based things when they're free.
Oh man.
And I'm blown away by that.
I would say, and I haven't been to a secular concert in a long time. Okay. But and please make sure that if it is one, make sure it's a decent one. But
of course,
I tell you, here's the word: people are engaged.
Mm-hmm.
They're engaged. Daniel, you and Ryan got something to say there, I'm sure.
I'm sorry, y'all.
No, yes, go for it, Ryan.
This goes for, I think that this sums it up right here. You're not going to fully appreciate or engage in something that you haven't, that has cost you nothing.
You've said that before.
Mm-hmm.
And that also means that if you're going to walk this walk, I'm sorry, but it's going to cost you something.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't free.
And if it hasn't yet, check yourself, because it's about to, if you're going to keep going down this road. It's going to cost you something. It cost God something, and he's the one that started it.
Yeah.
Just Mike brought that up. This, why in the beginning God created the earth was Mike's opening line. Why? Mm-hmm. If he knew that this is how it was going to turn out.
Yeah.
And yet he still chose to do it and still pay the price. Daniel?
It's funny you say why, because I was going to ask, why are we doing what we're doing? Why do we go to conferences? Why do we meet with people? Why are we doing the feasts? Why? I think a lot would argue that because they can doctrinally prove it. Okay, that's fine.
We have good desserts.
Yeah, desserts. But really, like, why? And I think a quick read through Revelation and the reprimands to the 7 communities or churches or whatever your translation puts it at, is maybe a good checklist to ask yourself this Yom Kippur even.
Yeah.
Go through those 7 communities. Like, you have forgotten your first love. And just ask yourself that. Have I forgotten my first love? You have become lukewarm. Ask yourself, have I become lukewarm? And that's actually interesting. I might do that this Yom Kippur.
I have actually already adopted it.
Yeah. So I'll
After
tell you
said that.
I got to be, very blunt. I left this weekend very, I'll maybe want to use the term jaded and a little hurt by some of the evidence that I saw. And that compounded over and granted, it's not been as long as those like yourself, Mike, have been doing this, but still this number of years. And then the verse rang in my ears, the love of many will grow cold. And I thought to myself, I think that it maybe even fits me, if the shoe fits, wear it. And that perception was different than I've perceived that verse before. Like, oh, well, the love of these people will grow. Well, what about the love of yourself towards the people, that even though you see some of these actions taking place, so your love toward them grows cold? Just honest.
Okay, Ryan, I got to butt in here. The verse says, because people will distance themselves from the Torah, the love of many will grow cold. So is it possible for us to be following the Torah, the commandments, observances, yet distancing ourselves from the message of the Torah, which is not about instructions and rules and regulations, but about the person of Messiah? And so we can go through the observances of Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and not put Messiah as the focus, and therefore end up with our love becoming colder instead of hotter.
Well, it becomes, if you take the Torah at just, like you said, the rote keeping of the regulations and rituals, you will end up with the Pharisees. The Messiah himself having to go and reprimand these people who knew and practiced the letter of the law probably better than any of us can claim to. I see Daniel and Dave are ready to.
Go ahead, Dave. You're right.
I'm about to say I'm chomping. Oh man, I can't hardly contain it when I'm this way. You guys are mentioning something that I've seen for a little bit, and I want to preface this. I am not a theologian. I do not know a lot of like Bible theories and all this other stuff, but there's something that has been very pervasive on my mind, and it's grown and grown, and I have not seen any indication that it is wrong. But please, if I say something that is incorrect, please, if you see any issue with this, please tell me. The concept of the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil has always been something that was always interesting to me, and then it hit me in a way because the Torah is a tree of life to those who grasp it and to those who are praiseworthy. Right? We know this, we see this, we understand this, and then after years and years and years, I see people that they're the Torah, they can recite law, regulation, and it was like, what else is missing? And the only thing that could come across my mind is that, and this is how and this is how I say this, so please preface this. I started to look at the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil as the exact same tree, and that the same tree can either be used to gain knowledge or used to be gain life. And I started to, then once I thought of that, then I started to, as going to different communities, I started to see those who would quote, refer, and maybe even downright just berate somebody for something over a law that they knew in Torah and could cite forwards, backwards, and everything. And then I saw a community that didn't really have a ton of understanding, maybe with all knowledge, but really you could see the heart of God in that place. Whereas they would understand some things and then they would move, like, again, not going against Torah, again, they're not going against it, but they might not be to the exact what do I say, maybe the orthodoxy of how some would interpret Torah if they read it verbatim and read it exactly how they believe it should be carried out. And it hurts to see that, because then it feels like there's just this knowledge machine that just wants to just run to berate somebody or accuse or put somebody down, instead of words of life being spoken over someone to encourage, to uplift. And again, I'm not saying, I do believe that there's two trees, but I sometimes wonder if we don't treat the Torah as the knowledge of good and evil versus the tree of life. And it kind of pains me to see that, because you realize how much that can just, it really does destroy people. And I've seen it too many times.
That might be a program for a later date there.
Ooh, that might be
Be
good.
an
Yeah.
interesting one. Daniel?
Ryan, I can't remember exactly what you said that sparked this. Probably just a mixture of everything, but something that my wife and I were talking about as we go into the feasts, we had this conversation a few days ago, was, well, let me first quote Ben Shapiro. He is, an Orthodox Jew and talk show host kind of guy. He said regarding the Bible that it does two things mainly, and one is establish eternal values, and number two is it was written to a specific people at a specific time.
Yeah.
And those two things are very important to keep in mind as you walk through the Bible, because the Torah establishes eternal values, yes, but there's things in the Torah that Yeshua did render unnecessary because he became the eternal sacrifice. There were things that we know that no longer had to be done because he was the fulfillment. He did not do away with it. He did fulfill it, and he didn't fulfill it so that we can stop obeying it. But there were certain points of the Torah that he fulfilled regarding the sacrifice, the sin offerings. He became that eternal offering to eternally cover our sins, that they didn't have to be covered continually over and over again. And so I think it's important to remember that as we look at the commandments regarding Yom Kippur and the commandments regarding the sin offerings and all these kind of things, because one thing I see in the cycle of the feasts with some people is a focus upon sin. And it's important to remember that we are sinful and that we need to conquer it, repent of it, and be aware of it in our lives, because that's the world we live in. But I don't think it needs to be the focus. The focus should be Yeshua. And the question that I have is, are we, in any of our observances and in the way that we act upon the feasts, are we belittling the sacrifice of Yeshua? Are we focusing so much on certain parts of sin that we actually forget that he defeated it once and for all? And I think that sometime, I don't know, it's just something I've been kind of musing on, because I feel like we should be observing the feasts differently, knowing Yeshua.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like going against the Torah. That's not what I'm trying to say. But just with an understanding of what he has done, because it does shift what Yom Kippur is about. It's no longer just a day of judgment. It's the day of sitting before him who has taken the full judgment upon himself. And, just, it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't say that, but it's just that last step before the kingdom. And I hope that's like kind of coming off clearly.
Let me go back to something that is very clear to me. I'll go back to something I think you brought up, of the priest would go into the Holy of Holies one time a year, and that was on Yom Kippur. This is what the whole book of Hebrews is about. Think of it this way, think of it being a new high priest. Okay. He has just been promoted to high priestlyhood, that year. Imagine that this is the only man that is going to see the Ark of the Covenant and the Shekinah, the glory that is in that Holy of Holies. Imagine what his whole being was like when he walked behind that veil and saw the cherubim the gold, all of that stuff. Do you think that he was standing there thinking about himself? No, I don't. No, I think he was overwhelmed with the presence of that ark in front of him. And for me, Yom Kippur is this: there's coming a day that I'm going to be overwhelmed with the presence of of him. Just totally overwhelmed with that presence. Guys, we got just a couple minutes, just about 10, 15 minutes. I want to take I know you probably got a lot of things we go to right now, and sorry, Dave, you get to them later. We'll do part two, maybe.
Maybe.
The word there of deny yourself or afflict yourself is the word self is nephesh. Okay. And if we go back into Genesis, the word nephesh is that he breathed in, and sorry, I don't have my balloons with me, but that's an inside joke, guys. You got to come to our conferences. So he breathed into Adam and Eve, and they became a living nephesh, a living soul. So that place of soul is talking about the breath of the Almighty that's in us. The word afflict or to deny can be translated humble. So let me ask you a question. We'll run around this one. How do I humble his breath that's in me?
I'll go ahead and jump on this. Okay. I think where I come from with my perspective on what you're saying here is I think that when you say nephesh and then you say, I think it's na, I'm pretty sure that's the Hebrew word there, with when it says to afflict your soul, when it says these things. And there's been many ideas on how to do that, and there's some who are extremely great ones, and there's some that are probably a little bit out there. It's okay, but let's focus on that. I think that you got a great point running here. I think it's the idea of you must understand that you are he breathes his life into you, yes, but you are a body of flesh. Doesn't mean that you're always perfect, right? Because we all still fall short. We definitely all do. This is a day though where, in my mind, and this is how I approach Yom Kippur, and this is again one of my favorite feasts of all the year. This is one of my favorite ones. And the reason why is because I absolutely love the atmosphere of the day. That's one of the things that's it's so heavy and intense. And the food thing is a byproduct. That's why I don't care too much about the food. I don't want to eat on this day. I just don't want to, because I'm denying myself. So that's where my perspective comes from this, is that I'm denying my flesh. I'm saying no to all that, because this is such a heavy day. And how I think of that is, just like you said, I don't think the priest was walking in to the Holy of Holies going, man, I can't wait to have some T-bone steak after this. Yeah. I don't think he was thinking that one bit. I think he was, as he's approaching it, because I think they were very human, and they went, I think I did that right. I think I did that right. I think I did that right. I think I took care of that, and they took care. I did that. Okay, I think I'm good. Focus. I think he's like, don't mess up. Do what I got to do. And I think that when it comes to that, when I see that verse, it's that afflict yourself, because it doesn't give exactly what to afflict with. Yeah, just to afflict. So I'll stop rambling. I think that's my answer.
Interesting thought.
Yep. I think the only thing that I can relate, in a sense, you mentioned, the idea of entering into that Holy of Holies, and you are being that responsible party. If you were to be that priest, the garments you should be wearing, you're going to be engaging in the practice that you should be engaging in. The only thing I can relate is for instance, when I walk on stage, almost the moments before I walk on stage to lead worship, and there's a level of expectancy within me. There's a level of anxiety, because I'm trying to make sure that I'm not overstepping in any way the things that the Father would have me to do. That I am, listening to the Spirit and trying to, while still delivering the music or delivering the songs, stay out of the way of their message. be the vessel for them flowing through, not being the vessel to show them off, if you will. And in those moments before, the thought of food, the thought of, going and getting a big plate of food, I cannot do it. It is physically impossible for me because of the amount of anticipation that is in me before I go. It is only after that I'm able to actually sit down and enjoy. And it reminds me so much of, like Dave mentioned, the heaviness of Yom Kippur, where you're coming forward with this anticipation of what the Father is going to do on this day. The whatever might be coming from those gates of heaven that are opened, that are going to be then shut at the end, after the Nila service. And it's also almost acting as the gateway into the celebration of Sukkot as well. Sort of in a sense, to me, the cleansing, the mikvah, if you will, before the joyous occasion that is to follow. I don't know if that makes sense, but there it is.
Got it for me. Daniel?
One thing that I thought of was and this is, kind of a spin on what you said, Dad, but our breath is temporary. We're not going to be breathing forever. One day, we don't know when, we will stop breathing.
Yeah.
But the soul that came from his breath that's inside of us is eternal. And so when I think about your statement, like kind of the humbling and the breath and the soul, it's almost like just kind of going low and acknowledging that our physical breath is temporary, but the eternal soul he has given us is eternal. And so it's like a day to humble your body so that your soul can be exalted.
Well said.
That there. Because I think it gets too focused on, and I know we've had this discussions before, not even on the program. Guys, don't just look at, everyone likes to harp on the food aspect of it, but it just says afflict your souls too. So that doesn't just mean food. Consider that. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You do what your family needs to do, what you yourself need to do. There might be something that you always enjoy doing. There might be something you always do, but for that day, because it's this one day is set apart for this holy time. How can you put your flesh away so that your soul be made magnified with him? And I think that that's the intent. What's your intent? I think we're all saying this, but I want to make sure to make it very clear, because what Daniel said is absolutely true. What's your intent coming into Yom Kippur? If it's just a fast, you're not getting it. Yes, you're to afflict your soul, but there's this whole other thing. We have Messiah. That's huge. There's a measure of joy that needs to be in us at this day. One of the things that I always picture for Yom Kippur is it's like we're worshiping God in a courtroom. That doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, right? I mean, especially if you've actually been on the wrong side of a courtroom, right? It's a heavy place to be inside of a courtroom.
That's cool. I like that.
So it's one of the only times a year, and this is where my liturgy is going to get in trouble for me, this is the one time where a very legal argument is sang. That sounds weird, but that's how Yom Kippur goes in traditional sense, which I think is just so beautiful, is that we're worshiping God when he's sitting in his courtroom. But we know who our final vindication is. We know our Messiah is standing for us. He's the best lawyer that's ever going to exist ever. He's going to stand for us in that day. So there's a joy that's there for us, but that still doesn't mean that we get to just act all and do whatever we want. And I think that's why God says that, because he'll say all the sacrifices that need to happen, but he says for those who are not going to be a part of this, you need to afflict yourself. This is not just any ordinary day. This is a super special day. And I think that as you're there, because you're a part of the my legal terms are escaping me at this point, but you're the defense at this point. You're on the defense side. You're not going to, even the lawyers even today tell you, don't look all happy and cheery, because it's going to make the jury not side with you if you're just looking like you're just don't care about what's going on. I always looked at that and went, that's an interesting look at that. Because again, it's your intent. What is your intent? And if Moses was able to be up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights and not have anything to drink or eat, there's something about not eating and being with the presence of God. I don't know what that is. Again, I'm not telling you what you have to do on that day, but there's something about afflicting yourself while you're with the Father. And I think if we don't focus so much on the sin, the negative part, like you brought up, Daniel, like we all sin, but let's not make that our number one focus. We need to realize Messiah's in our corner. That's pretty cool. We're in the corner of Messiah. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. But if Moses was able to do what he did that long ago, I think twice, right? I think there's something that's pretty cool to be in the presence of God. And this is such a heavy, amazing day. That's really why I enjoy it. It's not about the fasting, it's about being in this place where God is going to judge, but he's going to show favor to those he loves. And that's a truly amazing thing. And we get to just leave with so much joy on that day because then we get to rest in Sukkot. So I gotta go off my soapbox on those things.
I got an interesting one for you here, David. It's not that we're in his corner, but we're hiding in him.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
There
that's
you go.
way better. That's way better. I like that. I like that.
We're hidden in the one who cannot be judged because of his perfection. Two things I'm going to ask you a question, each one of you a question for closing, and I'll go first to give you a second to think about it. But Daniel, you mentioned about that it's a time to not focus on the flesh so that we can focus on the spirit that was breathed into us. I think this goes to the concept, I think Ryan, it was you that said, and if I get this backwards, guys, I'll give whoever the right credit. It was Ryan. We need to stay out of the way of the message. Yom Kippur is a day that we can get ourselves in the way of the message. And the message is redemption, of standing before a holy God as unholy people that have been made holy because of his work. That's the message. And it should be a day that we stand in awe, that 24-hour period that we stand in awe. So here's my question as a closing thing. I'd like you to give one tip for people going into this Yom Teruah or Yom Kippur, whether they've been doing this for a number of years or just this may be their first time. One tip to make this a meaningful day. And I'll go first and say that sundown on for us Sunday night is the day that this is turned off. The computer that I have is turned off. The television is turned off. It gets turned off other times. But this phone for a 24-hour period will be off. And it really doesn't matter what is going on around me. So tip from me, turn this off. Who wants to go next?
Go ahead, Dave.
I was about to say, I'm sorry. I could do block them. I'm going to do one now, and that's what I said last. Check where your intent is going into Yom Kippur. That's just what Mike said. If your intent is right, you'll make decisions just like what Mike's saying. You'll make decisions like that. You'll evaluate your life, and this is a time of introspection. You will evaluate what you find that you always do, and then you'll figure out where you need to cut. And I would highly advise the more you can cut to focus on this day, the better. But if your intent is right, that's what this whole entire time is. So take these 10 days of all these days and moments as it's leading up to really truly introspect. You don't want to be waiting till Yom Kippur to be forgiving. No, you're doing it now. Do it now as you're leading up to it. Find those people, whatever you can, if you have an issue with. This is the time where God's kind of like presenting it, saying, hey, remember this issue? Why don't you deal with it? And if you don't sense that, ask the Father. Ask the Father as you're praying. What issues do I have maybe with a brother or sister? What issue do I have between so-and-so and so-and-so? Do I have any? Is it me? Is it them? What is it? So I can get myself checked so that before I enter into this day, I'm able to have that intent moving into this day with the full knowing that I'm redeemed, that I'm going to be atoned for, because I've forgiven those who, he says that, right? You don't forgive them. Why should I forgive you?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. I would say that it's very easy. We've talked about focusing on the food and so forth. It's very easy to approach this day as a day to get through. To sort of
Yeah.
buckle down and grind through just so you can get through it, so we can get to Sukkot or get to when I can eat again, or whatever it is. I would say maybe take the time to slow down and spend those hours that may seem to drag on in conversation with the Father, in prayer, in replace the time that you would normally, like Mike said, look at your phone, in being thankful. So speaking of the things that the Father has done for you that year, the mountains that He's moved, if you will, even if it's just you, speaking with your spouse or whatever. I know for me last year, it was as somber as the day was. It also seemed to be a time where I reconnected in a way at a deeper level with my wife. Because of that, all the distractions and things of the week and everything were gone, and we together could focus on and pray together before the Father. That was huge. Again, it all comes back to shifting that focus, if you will. So yeah, the thankfulness.
Yeah. Ryan, I think it was you that said the thing about if you give a man a fire, he'll be warm for a day.
Yes.
And if you set a man on fire, he'll be warm for the rest of his life.
Yes.
Was that you? Okay.
That was me. Yes.
So the reason I say that is because it says you are to deny yourself. And then it says, and you are to bring an offering made by fire to Adonai, to God. And so this is partially kind of from what God spoke to me last year. I have 4 children, 6 and under. And so this day looks differently for me than for some other people, as you can imagine.
Exactly.
There's still diapers that need to be they don't, it's like they don't really know what you're supposed to do on Yom Kippur. They still need diapers changed, and they still need to be fed because some of them are 1. So this day looks a little different. And so what I would say is ask the Father how He wants you to observe this day, and remove the pressure from yourself of how you think you should observe this day. He's not looking for your performance. He's looking for your life as an offering.
Mm. There it is.
Yeah. I mean, because who knows, if we do all these things, we might find that, in the end, He kind of speaks to us about having a hope and a future that's for good and not for evil, because we've got a destination, a purpose, and all of those things. And, if we turn all this stuff off and not focus on our flesh, but on His breath inside of us, we might just hear that breath, which was, by the way, the same breath that breathed into Adam in the first place. His breath is still breathing. My prayer would be that each one of you out there on this Yom Kippur specifically would experience that breath in a way that would define the rest of your life. We're going to be taking a couple weeks off for Yom Kippur and for Sukkot. And so may the Father, I would say, may He bless this time. No, may you be a blessing unto Him during this time. See you guys in a couple weeks.
Sounds
See you
good.
next time.